Briefly, I mentioned before the previous meeting that the local budget law is that 35 pages of great insomnia therapy, and I just wanted to mention it's also persnickety on certain things, and one of which is that it's emphatic about budget committee members cannot receive any compensation. And so for those of you that may be getting the stipend for your meetings that you log and turn in for the stipend, unfortunately today the meanie local budget law won't allow compensation for today's meeting. So my apologies. So if the staff don't reimburse you what you had expected, it's the budget chair's fault, not theirs. So anyway, with that, we'll move on to the third agenda item, the proposed budget Q&A, which I believe you got copies of some material, cover memo and so forth that Lori had gotten out to us last week. So with that, I will quit rambling and turn it over to Lori.
And here's the good news. I'm not able to share my screen.
Oh, well, good. So everybody that got their packet and reviewed their slides, they've got them right there in
Thank
your packet.
You. Yes. And, go to the packet and go to the cover slide that shows the proposed budget. And we will do this the old-fashioned way. So at our last budget committee meeting, we had a question related to the bond capital program, requesting clarification on what is included in PMLS, what are the FEMA accreditation projects, and the other projects within the program. So there is some overlap between those categories. And if you'll go to the next page in that presentation document, which I'm going to take myself to the next page, yes, that is the correct. Thank you, Eric. So the $150 million general obligation bond has identified projects for funding in 3 different categories. We have included the project map in your packet that identifies the Portland Metro Levy Study, or PMLS, projects and the FEMA projects. There is some overlap in these categories. So this picture of circles really helped me to kind of clarify the pieces of the puzzle for all of the things that are included in the GO bond. So first, in the purple circle, there are the PMLS projects. So these are the projects that are identified to be funded in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers federal program. As you can see, a portion of these projects are also part of the list of projects needed to be completed for FEMA accreditation. The district is the local sponsor for the U.S. Army Corps and provides local match funding, which consists of cash contributions to the Corps, real estate transactions, and what they call relocations, which is things like moving utilities in relation to the project construction. The Army Corps is paying for the planning, design, and construction. They use part of our cash contributions for that, but the bulk of the money comes from the federal government and flows into the Army Corps. And in case, for some of you that are new, we don't own the levies. The Army Corps actually owns the levies, so it makes sense that the bulk of this project funding is theirs. We maintain the levies. The FEMA accreditation projects are those projects necessary to bring the district back into compliance for accreditation. And a portion of these projects, but not all of them, are included in the PMLS program, and then the remainder are funded by the district through the GEO bond program. The remainder of the bond funding is planned for use on other flood safety projects and environmental projects. So we'll take a look at the next page where we can start to walk through those projects. So this is the list. Now it says UFSWQD PMLS projects at the top of the page. This is the list of PMLS projects, which includes both pump station projects and levee projects. And these are described in that project map document that's included in your packet, so you can see a description of what each one of these projects will be. Let's jump to the next slide. So these are the PMLS projects that support FEMA accreditation. And these are also included in the PMLS project list. So there's 3 of them, not a huge amount. And then next slide with the orange circle on it, these are the FEMA accreditation projects that are included in the bond but aren't part of PMLS. And finally, the last page, included in the bond are other flood safety projects such as floodplain restoration and resilience, upgrades to the Broadmoor and Northeast 181st Avenue pump stations, and implementation of the district's facility plan recommendations once that planning effort is complete. So that is the end of my wonderful presentation without slides. We can take questions about those projects, or if you all have other questions about the budget, we're happy to answer those questions as well.
Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So Lori, I was just trying to follow the slides and the color coding. So I see how it was a little bit hard for me to understand, and I'm trying to find, I keep losing the slides. They're there. So the color codes, the purple matches the levy projects. So
correct.
Okay, and then the blue ones, the pump station projects is under other flood safety projects, right?
Are you looking at the map? I tried to correspond my colors in the slides to the map so that you could see that there was a correspondence between the slides and the map.
Oh, okay. I guess I was just looking at the little.
Yeah. So the blue kind of raindrop and the purple, that corresponds to the map that shows you those PMLS projects.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wasn't following along. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair?
Go
I
ahead.
have a question.
Sure.
On the map with the projects located on them and the colors and all that, there's some reference up in the legend. I think it's FEMA required projects, and then there were projects that were recommended for core compliance. Maybe compliance wasn't in there. Do the 2 words required or recommended actually set priorities? If there's a budget constraint, money doesn't flow in, do the required projects get funded first compared to the recommended projects? So I don't know if you can see up in the right-hand corner of the map in the legend.
Colin, anyway, do you want to start with how we got to those definitions, and then we can address the bigger question, which is, we don't know yet, Phil, about whether we would rejuggle them. So.
Okay.
Yeah, Director Olson, that's a great question, and it is completely a function of when that map was made. That was made, I think the date is on there, but it's 2021, and it was after we had received the what they call the Chief's report. So that basically means that the head of the Army Corps of Engineers finds that there's federal interest at the end of the feasibility study, but it was before we actually went into got the Water Resources Development Act of 2022 authorization. So you could, if there was an update to it, and there should be, so regret not having the updated version, where it says recommended, that should say authorized. So all of those projects are now authorized for construction under WRDA 2022. So regret that language hiccup.
That helps. Thanks.
And I apologize if people are raising their hands wanting to be recognized. I somehow have got myself on a screen and I can't get back to the view of everyone. I'm stuck in the chat side and I don't know, can't seem to figure out how to get out of it. I apologize. So any other questions?
Chair, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
So on the legend, what's the difference between the orange and the green? Uh, it's everything looks the same except for the green says ads recommended for federal investment. Anyway, I just wasn't understanding the difference between the orange and the green.
Core funded versus local funding. The core authority relates to one, and ones that we have to do because it was a failure of operations and upkeep are on us. I maybe didn't word that exactly right. So they're all levy projects. Some the Corps is authorized to implement, and some we have to do.
So I guess that's just kind of confusing for me. So you're saying that, go ahead, Lori.
The orange ones are the FEMA accreditation projects that aren't included in PMLS. So they aren't part of the Army Corps project, but we need to complete them to get accredited.
Okay.
So those are on the circle that doesn't intersect between PMLS.
Okay.
Those are the orange ones.
And then
the green ones are the ones that are in PMLS and they're needed for accreditation, both. So they're in that little chunk that hits both circles.
Oh, okay. And I guess, but the funding, okay, so the purple ones.
So the purple ones are part of PMLS.
That are covered by our levy, paid for by our levy.
Our levy would be the local match. Our GEO bond would be the local match.
Okay.
And the remainder of that cost is covered by the federal program.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing with the blue ones. The blue ones are, we're the local match, so that's going to be mostly in the GEO bond. And then the remainder of it is covered by the federal program through the Army Corps. And then the green ones are, we're the local match, and the Army Corps is the federal funding, and they also just happen to be projects that need to be done for the accreditation. So they're the overlap, but they're included in the federal project.
Okay, it's just a little bit confusing for me.
It is very confusing
to see. I guess it might be helpful, not that I don't want to create more work for you, but to have something that is related more to the funding streams of each color, kind of like just what you told me, but
it's too granular is what I'm hearing.
And if you look at the detail that's on starting on page 3, that's where at the top of the page I've talked about what the funding source is. So in the slides on page 3, the purple and the blue are part of PMLS. So that's where the local match and the federal government is the funding. Then the green ones on page 4, same thing. They're part of PMLS. They are also accreditation projects, but they are part of PMLS, so we're the local match. And the Army Corps is receiving the federal funding. And then the orange ones are not part of PMLS, so they're on the bond for accreditation, but they're not part of that federal program, so we're paying all of the cost via the bond.
Okay.
If that doesn't work, let us know and we can simplify a little bit more.
And I know that Mark is working on another updated sheet that talks about the projects. It's still going through the edit process, so I think there will be a point in time where that's ready to share with you all, so that you have it all on one page and you have something to kind of reference related to these projects. We weren't able to get it ready for this meeting tonight.
Okay, well, we'll wait for that. It's just not super, like, anybody coming new to this conversation, it's going to be hard to understand what funding streams are associated with what projects.
Yeah, and it's the challenge really is on the federal side. We tend to think when you have a federal program that's federal money coming into the district. And so 100% of those costs then end up showing up on the district books. But with Army Corps projects, it doesn't work that way. With Army Corps projects, the federal money is going to the Army Corps. and they're just looking to us for the local match funds. So we're not the ones that are responsible for 100% of the cost. So it's a little bit different than what you normally see with a grant program.
Okay.
The added confusion is there's core projects, there's FEMA projects, and then there's some core funded FEMA projects, and then there's some non-core funded FEMA projects. So,
and
sorry,
thankfully, it's not all going to happen in the next 90 days. So we will have plenty of time to revisit them kind of one by one as they get through their further design refinement. And as you say, the core is the one that drives their projects. And so we'll be able to follow along with those. I mean, as the way I think of it is the core projects, they send us an invoice for our share. Whereas the typical ones where we're getting grant money in, we're the ones hiring the contractors. Whereas the core projects, they're hiring the contractors and just saying, okay, district, here's your local cost share percent for the amount we paid last month or last quarter, or however they do it. So it's, the fund, the money flows different directions if it's a core driven project versus we're doing it to comply with a FEMA project or some other locally initiated one.
And the flow of funds is actually even a little bit more complicated than that. Part of it, we give them a cash contribution. Part of it, they give us credit for the local match, but they have us paying for the real estate transactions. So you'll see us coming to you to talk about real estate transactions. They have us paying for those, and they have us paying for those, what they call relocations, which is basically that work with moving utilities and those sorts of things that really are, it's more logical to have the local organization driving that work and driving the real estate work. So yeah, we're not even paying 100% of the cash to them, but we're focusing on the real estate and the relocations, and then giving them some required cash contributions that go towards the design.
And for the proposed budget, I mean, we're making funds available, and we're planning on some additional debt issuance, but so much of it is still kind of further out, another 18, 24, 36 months, that we'll have a chance to kind of take these in small chunks and learn how to digest them and follow the process. But this proposed budget just gives us enough capacity to be able to respond as the core is able to move things forward. So anyway, sorry, Lori, I interrupted you.
No, that's it. It's just a little, I get it. It's hard to slice and dice because everything is very kind of convoluted, and the funding streams are sometimes blended. So it's just a little bit hard to follow. I don't know if anybody else is, and it's also 6:00 after a long day.
That wouldn't have anything to do with it at all, I'm sure.
Thank you, Lori.
Sheriff Stegman, I was really grateful that you raised this issue last meeting, because I remember maybe week 2 on the job, poor Colin had to come and explain it to me, because I was describing the work as one big set of projects. And so you're definitely not alone. And I think we'll continue to refine the story, and I think you're right to ask us to do that. So I appreciate the question.
Okay, well, I can see people again now, thankfully. So if anybody else has questions, wants to wave, but certainly feel free to speak up. But okay, Lori, were there more pages that you needed to go through? No.
This
okay.
was it.
Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand in the sequence of project delivery phases, conceptual idea to a plan, to preliminary engineering design, to design, construction, etc. where, and this affects the budget and where costs are allocated into a general fund, materials and supplies or services versus capitalized. Is there a consistent theme that work on concepts and plans is expensed in materials and services, and then when it goes into design, it gets capitalized? Or is it dependent on the source of the funds where that demarcation happens? And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm trying to understand why some things show up on the capital plan for this coming year that I'm not sure if it's still in the planning phase or design phase. And an example would be enhancements. There's $500,000 for an enhancements bond capital fund project, but it didn't show up in the capital improvement plan project descriptions. So I'm assuming it's probably still a concept. On the other hand, there's, the watershed improvement plan is still a plan, and it's in materials and services. So I'm just trying to wrangle in my own head what gets expensed and what gets capitalized and when, because that has an effect on potentially when we go after the second tranche of the bond and
Yes.
that kind of thing.
So our accounting rules are what guide us here.
Yeah.
Planning efforts where we're trying to decide what to do, where we know we need to do something, but we don't know what it is, those are expensed. So you see the watershed plan, for example, that's on the general fund. We treat it as a non-capital project, so it makes it distinct, and we can track how much all of the work cost for working on that planning effort, but it is an operating expense. You don't end up with a capital asset out of a planning effort. You end up with information to know what things you need to do next. When you move into designing a project, so you know what you're going to be working on and you're creating the design to determine how you're going to construct that project, that becomes capital. So you will see those items end up in the general obligation bond project fund list. You mentioned enhancements. Was that the $500,000, the PIR pump station 4-bay enhancements? That's design work that we're doing in relation to our work with the PIR pump station project. It was work that actually got value engineered out of the grant program for the design work for the PIR pump station, but we know we need to do that work in conjunction with the planning efforts that are going, or with the design efforts that are going on right now with the PIR pump station. That is why that's in the GEO bond as a budget amount, but that is design work that will be happening in the upcoming year. So that is capital. Those planning efforts, the facilities plan, the strategic planning, the watershed plan, all of those things are operating expense. You will see there is general fund capital also in the budget, and I'm turning myself to that page right now so that I can talk intelligently about it. Please excuse me. Oh, I can. How nice. So for the general fund, we have a tiny amount of money in the general fund budget for PMLS. That is because when we had the original legacy districts, Penn 1 received some local funding from local partners that was restricted dollars for the PMLS project. We are using those restricted dollars reside in the general fund. So those are capital expenses in the general fund, but we're using those restricted dollars to pay for those expenses.
Okay, thanks. And a real quick follow-up. So in the planning department budget for materials and services, there's new responsibilities line item, 500,000 each of the next 2 years. So that's not, and that's materials and services as opposed to capital. But
that's correct.
So that's not duplicate of natural floodplain restoration projects, any of that. It's totally separate.
No, it is not. That is money that we set aside in this year's budget, and we are also setting aside in next year's budget for us to start to work with you board members on what are the types of activities do we want to complete in relation to the new responsibilities of the district, which are environmental, equity, and cultural history. So we still need to have those discussions with you. And obviously, we're not going to be able to spend $500,000 this year because we're already in April. I know that Colin is planning on doing some planning efforts with you to start to talk about how we want to utilize those funds to make sure that we are also meeting those responsibilities as an organization. But those we anticipate will be operating expense. We don't anticipate be capital spending.
Okay. Thanks,
And
Lori.
just to be sure the board's aware, on environment and equity and some other things, there are dollars built into the capital program for the individual projects. In addition, this money is really separate from that and more in, again, the interim board wanted to make sure you had some options in that space and wasn't set up to make decisions about it. So you've got a little cushion to do additional work, particularly around cultural history and so on, where the capital projects don't have as much associated with that.
And it's a holding amount. It's available for us, but like everything else in the budget, it may be an appropriation. It's an authorization to potentially spend, but it's not an obligation. So we won't, if we don't get to a program or Colin isn't able to make as much progress with it, that money isn't just going to get spent because it was there. It'll roll over and we can address it in a future period. So other questions on the proposed budget? Okay. Lori, was there anything else that you wanted to cover this evening?
Just that our next step here in the process, and I see that Director Eisenbeiss has a question. Our next step is to take a look at approval of the proposed budget, and that work will be on April 17th.
At our next meeting.
Correct.
Yep. Director Eisenbeiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question actually about the tariffs memo that was included in the packet. Thank you for including that. It's helpful information. So on the first page of the memo, the third sub-bullet under impact of steel tariffs on the construction industry, it identifies strategies to navigate the tariffs. I'm just wondering whether there are any strategies that the district is employing that would have budget implications or budget needs that we should be considering. For instance, one of the items that's listed here is engaging in strategic purchasing.
So for us on the capital side, we're not really far enough along. A lot of our work is still design work on the capital side. So we're not far enough along that we would do that sort of strategic purchasing related to construction. I know on the IT side, Clint's here, he and I have been talking about this. We have some budget available, remaining budget available this year. So we are going to try to advance purchase as many computers as we can before those prices go up, because we do know that on the technology side, we're going to start to see some pretty significant increases in prices. And then what we're going to do to manage it for next year is some people are going to have to hold on to their computers longer than our standard 3 years. So we'll purchase as many as we can, but when we're out of budget, we'll have to just make some delays in replacement of some of that computer equipment. And then what you would see as a result is probably us asking for an increase to the technology budget in the following year so that we can start to make up the difference for those increases in price. Phil?
Thank you.
So the only thing I'll add to that description is the strategic purchasing component may also include looking at alternative materials that can provide similar tensile and core strength that the steel might be able to provide. There may not be any, but that's something the design team would at least investigate.
Relatedly to that, I can't remember where some of the larger equipment or vehicles fall in the plan, but are those considered as a part of strategic purchases in terms of timing?
So we have a couple of vehicles in the general fund budget for next year, and I know that they're looking at, they're already working on the requirements for those. One of those was a carry forward. So I think those are going to happen pretty early in the summer. So hopefully we can get to those quickly enough. It sounds like today some of the tariffs were delayed, so your guess is as good as mine as to what the implications are going to be there. But we're going to do our best to manage that and try to get those ordered early if we can.
I would just add on the larger construction program, and Kevin and Bill can speak to this more authoritatively, but as we approach 30% design, we're going to have a much better idea of what materials we actually need, and we'll be able to price those more effectively. And we intend to come to you at 30% with any adjustments we need to make or stress points that we're going to seek policy guidance on. So the real initiative now is to get enough design work done that we can really tighten up our estimates.
Okay. Any other questions on what Lori presented this evening, or in the packet materials that we got last week, or on the delightful budget book that we received the last time? All right. Well, for those of you that are new to the process, it's not uncommon for the budget committee to not have lots of changes. By and large, the professional staff are the ones that are closest to the process and are in a best position to figure out what's going to be needed to deliver services in the coming period. So it's not uncommon for there to be little in the way of changes between the proposed budget and the budget committee approved budget. Occasionally there's some things, but more often than not, it ends up being that staff comes up with some additional information that they've learned during the kind of multi-week process. And so they may come to us with a tweak later on down in this process. But so far, we're making good progress. And as Lori had mentioned, we will be on task for the budget committee to vote to approve the budget, and then it can get into the TSCC sequence, and then you as a board will still have to have the opportunity then to adopt the budget when we get into June. So this or the next meeting will not be the last time you get a chance to see or talk about the budget. And I know you're all just excited about that. So anyway, unless there's any further comments this evening, thank you all for attending. And again, my apologies for the delayed start. We appreciate you making time on this Wednesday evening. And we're set for, you mentioned it already, it's a week from tomorrow, correct? Is our regular monthly meeting, and we'll have a budget committee meeting and a board meeting. So, and I'm sure Emily and Wendy will be out with more reminders and correspondence in the meantime. So thank you one and all for attending. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.